Okay.
Go for it. Good. Okay. Well, hello everybody, and welcome, and thank you very much for tuning in to the very first of our Future Marketors speaker meetings. We are going to be recording this event, so if any of you would prefer not to be recorded on film, please turn your video off, but we would much prefer it if you keep your video on, so that our speaker has some friendly faces to look at. But do mute yourself on your audio mic. My name is Julian Boulding, and in addition to running my own marketing consultancy business, I'm a freeman of the Worshipful company of marketers, and my role is to moderate this webinar. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all of you, our future marketers. It was absolutely great to get to know you all a couple of weeks ago for some social introductions. And I think really it was an inspiration to us senior folks to catch the amazing energy and enthusiasm as you embark on your careers in this great profession of marketing. Secondly, I'd like to welcome my illustrious colleagues from the company. We have one or two of our senior members, including John Farrell, who's the company's senior warden and likely to be our next master, subject to election. We have one or two guests from the Younger Marketors group, led by Simon Ledbetter, which might be the next step in the company for some of you future marketers. And of course, I want to give a special word for Liveryman, Keith Rowland and Martin Ashton, who between them have really led the creation and development of our growing Future Marketors group. So welcome, everybody. And now just a couple of housekeeping rules before I introduce our speaker. Firstly, on the timing. So after this introduction, we'll have a 30-minute presentation from our speaker. We will then have 20 minutes for your questions. So please be ready and prepare some. We'll finish the formal proceedings by just before 6 o'clock, but you are all welcome to stay and chat in the Zoom room, so don't feel you have to rush off. Please do keep your microphones muted, and we will unmute you if we're calling on you to ask a question. There will be the Q&A at the end of the talk, but as soon as you think of a question, please do send it to me, Julian Boulding, directly in the chat. Most of you are pretty familiar with Zoom, I guess, but just in case, to do this, you go to your chat box, and where it says to, you should see a drop-down menu, and instead of everyone, select Julian Boulding. I will go through the questions and we'll select questions to ask our speaker when he's finished speaking. I will then call on you individually to ask your questions, so please be ready. If you would prefer me to ask your question for you, please just say that in brackets next to your question. You should hopefully have your Zoom viewing mode set to speaker view, but if not, please just click speaker view at the top right of your screen. If you do have any technical issues, please message Martin Ashton directly in the chat or email Martin at martin.ashton@clydeco.com. And in the hopefully very unlikely event that the system crashes, please wait 2 minutes and then log back in via the same link that you already used to log in just now. Thank you all. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Keith Weed. Keith studied engineering at Liverpool University, from where he joined Unilever's marketing department in 1983. And during his long and successful career with the company, he rose to be marketing director, senior vice president, managing director, and finally chairman of Unilever in the UK. He then, in 2005, moved over to global roles, first as head of global home care and hygiene, and from 2010 as global chief marketing officer and communications officer, a title which he held till retiring from the company in March last year. Keith was voted the CMO of the year in 2017, 2018, and 2019 by both LinkedIn and Fortune magazine. Within the advertising industry, which is my background, I'd have to say he was also very well known for sporting quite the brightest and most colourful jackets in the south of France during his annual speaking engagements at the Cannes Lions Festival. Today, he holds directorships in a number of companies, including WPP and Sainsbury's. He's the chair of the Consumer Industries Board at the World Economic Forum, a board member of Business in the Community, president of the History of Advertising Trust, and president of the UK Advertising Association, which sounds quite a lot. And you might think, like the French writer and philosopher Voltaire, who said that after a life full of adventure, as Keith has undoubtedly had, il faut cultiver son jardin. One should stay home and cultivate one's garden. Well, Keith did a little better than that, because he has just become president of the Royal Horticultural Society. But perhaps we might say that his finest achievement was his invitation in 2010 to become a liveryman of the Worshipful company of marketers, a culmination of a journey on which we hope many of you are starting out today. If that sounds a little daunting, don't be concerned. Keith was known throughout his Unilever career for his commitment to sharing his expertise and developing the talent of his teams. He's a true leader. He's always open to ideas. He's always ready to support young colleagues and generous with his time, as he is being with us today. So please do join me in offering a very warm welcome to Keith Weed. And I'm just going to highlight Keith as a speaker. And welcome, Keith. It's great to see you.
It's very good to be here. So firstly, a very warm hello to everyone. And I'm really pleased to spend this little time with you. I'm a great believer in learning from each other. And hopefully I will give you some thoughts to think about. And maybe some of the things that I will say will confirm things that you are already planning to do or doing, and give you the sort of the commitment to go bolder and faster. Or maybe some of the things that I'm about to say will challenge some of your thoughts, and maybe rethink what you're about to do, or maybe change direction slightly. Or maybe some of the things I say are totally new ideas, and that would be good as well. But whichever it is, confirming what you're thinking, or challenging what you're thinking, or new ideas, then if I can do that to each of you over the next half an hour, it will have been half an hour well spent. And then, of course, we have question and answers, when I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have in well, any direction at all. As I say, most of my career has been with Unilever, but I now have this wonderful portfolio of different roles, and that brings its own fair share of interest as well. I thought one way I could think about how I was going to speak to you is to think about sort of structure of 5 and 5. So I'm going to just reflect a little bit on 5 things which I think are important, interesting about marketing, that I'd like to share with you as you sort of at a different stage of your marketing journey than I am. But I've had a few lessons on the way, and I think sharing those thoughts just might, again, encourage you to think about things in a different way. And then actually just 5 thoughts about just good old lessons learned, and in a way that hopefully might engage you as well. So on the principle of 5 and 5, I will head off, and then at the Q&A, I'm sure you can come up with at least 5 questions to complement my structure of 5 and 5. So if I was going to start off on the 5 things about marketing, I think that sort of more than ever right now, the world is very confused and very challenging. And I think one thing that marketers can do more than anyone else is own the outside. I'm a great believer that marketers should bring the outside in and the future forward. And in doing so, really help companies, chart their ways through difficult time. Because if you want to get to the future first, you need to have a point of view on the future. I often used to tease the Unilever CFO, Chief Financial Officer, that his job was to count the money and where it's going and ensure that we were spending it well. But my job was to work out where the money was going to come from, where was the future growth going to come from. And I think as a marketer, if you can understand the trends of what's going on in the outside world, and share those internally, you can be hugely helpful and resourceful to strategy development and bring real insight in the business. I think too often marketers get caught into my role here is to do marketing, but if you really take marketing in its broad sense, and you know, what is the definition of marketing to you, but if we are going to serve consumers and customers better, if we are going to generate consumer demand-led growth, the only sustainable growth, we're going to need a point of view about what's going on in the world and to be able to share that with our colleagues. There are a lot of people in businesses right now bluffing about what's going on from what they read in the newspaper or see on television, etc. But if as a marketer you can be more rigorous and do research and have a rigorous point of view, not an I think, I hope point of view, but a really rigorous point of view of where the world might go, you can get to the future first. In fact, one of the first things I did when I became Chief Marketing Officer of Unilever, I did a massive piece of trend work around the world. And in doing so, came up with 20 big trends, of which we had 4 priority trends, which we built our strategy on. And one of them, and this was then back in 2009-10, was now very obvious, was of course the digital revolution. But back in 2010, although it was only 10 years ago, for a soup and soap company like Unilever, where you know, the digital revolution was going to sit, was not so obvious. But in fact, in doing that and betting early on the digital revolution meant that I could get to the future first. I got to Silicon Valley really early in the days where you did sit down with Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, and you know, you did understand the very early days of what was going on. So my first thought is about owning the future, owning the outside, and being able to share that with your colleagues. And you will always be helpful, and it will always help the growth orientation of your business. The second thought is about putting people first. Now, again, this is an obvious one, and people might say, well, hold on, you know, we know about this. This is marketing. It's all about serving people and consumers. I think so many businesses just lose the focus on their customers and their consumers. They just get too busy with all the stuff they're doing. Being in meetings, being in Zooms, answering emails, doing all the important things that you have to do, like filling in purchase orders, etc. And people just lose time and focus on consumers. And if you as a marketer can be the person who genuinely brings that alive, I think you can make a huge difference in your business. When I say I'm talking about real people. I'm not talking like you know, a head of hair in search of a shampoo or a pair of armpits in search of a deodorant. I'm talking about real people's lives and how you can help serve real people's lives. And I'm a great believer in one of the things that marketers need to be is curious. Curiosity is one of the most important things. You know, how curious are you about the lifestyles and lives of your customers and your consumers? And you can learn about people all around. I mean, you don't need to go on focus groups. You can just learn from your family and friends. One of the things I do, and I admitted this once publicly, I got teased terribly afterwards, but you know, when I go and visit a friend or someone's house, at some stage I will say, oh, I'll just go to the loo. And when I go to the loo, you know, the first thing I'll do, I'll close the door, lock the door, and I'll open their cupboards. You know, I was working in personal products and health and beauty, and one of the things you learn an awful lot about what you see in people's cupboards. Now, I suggest you don't come out of it holding something saying, why did you buy that? That would not be a good thing to do. You shouldn't necessarily own up to what you're doing, but being inquisitive, being curious, you'll learn an awful lot about what's going on. What's at the back of the cupboard? What's at the front of the cupboard? And I think that sort of focus on consumers. One thing that Julian mentioned is I ran the global laundry and home care business for Unilever. A business when I took over was declining, in a lot of trouble. I'm pleased to say 5 years later, when I left, it was the fastest growing business in Unilever, and to this day, 10 years later, still is. But the focus on that turnaround was just literally getting closer to consumers, understanding how consumers really did wash their clothes around the world. I remember going to a visit to different countries, and one of the things I used to do first was go and visit consumers. So again, how often do you go and visit customers, consumers? People say, oh, I go, yes, once a quarter, whatever. But do you really? And is really once a quarter enough? I mean, shouldn't you be going, you know, in Sainsbury's, the CEO of Sainsbury's visits stores every single week. How many marketers actually go and visit consumers every single week? And I'd always start off by going to visit consumers before I went to the business. And I can remember this one particular country, and I'd gone to retail and gone around shops. Then I'd gone and visited consumers in their homes, speak to them about our products with a translator, etc. And then I went to the business and turned up in the boardroom and walked in, and there was the CEO of the business and his team. And the first thing he said to me, he said, right, okay, now we can really get down to business. And I said, wow, I mean, that's an interesting message you've just given to all your board members. The fact that I was out there seeing consumers isn't business, and seeing charts and P&Ls here is business. And he said, oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. So, well, no, you did mean it like that. That's exactly what you said. And I said, you know, we at the top of the business need to model that actually going to consumers, understanding consumers, serving consumers better is what we need to strive for. So within that spirit, I think putting people first is a hugely important thing, which takes on my third point, which is about brands as a force for good. Now, I know there's an awful lot said around purposeful brands, and it's you might think, oh, it's just too much. I think we're just starting the journey, actually. I think there's been a lot of purpose washing, greenwashing during this challenging times of COVID. But actually, the role of brands to serve society. And let's face it, that's what businesses did when they first started. They served society. And if you served the needs of consumers better than the others, you grew business and your competitors faded away. I think somewhere in the 80s and 90s, marketing got a little bit lost and we got into sort of selling more stuff. And that selling more stuff, I think we lost the view on actually we really need to serve a bigger purpose. Yes, of course, we need to have the functional benefits and the emotional benefits. But if we can get to a bigger purpose, we can deliver a really exciting proposition to our consumers. And although I was the Chief Marketing Officer of Unilever and I ran communications as well, I also ran sustainability. So I ran environmental and social sustainability globally. And I was often asked, you know, what is the business case for sustainability? And I always used to love to answer, you know, I'd love to see the business case for the alternative. What is the business case for destroying the very planet we live in, the very societies we're trying to serve? And in building what was then called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, we managed to build into our brands like Dove and Ben & Jerry's and Domestos, this idea that you could do something positive to the environment and something positive to society, and in doing so, build the business. And our sustainable living brands, the purpose of Unilever was to make sustainable living commonplace. Our sustainable living brands grew 46% faster than the rest of our business and delivered 70% of our growth. Now you can also say, well, hold on, didn't you do all that sustainability stuff? You know, how did the business do? Well, actually, during that 9 years, we grew top line every single year. We grew profit every single year. We grew market share. We tripled the share price of Unilever. And as I say, we're not a tech company. We were a soup and soap company. And we delivered over 300 total shareholder return. So it was, by any stretch of imagination, it was a very successful stretch for Unilever. And it really became a business which people wanted to join. And we had a real sort of magnet for talent, which still to this day continues. So I think brands as a force for good, brands that matter, you know, going from marketing to consumers to mattering to people is something that's still an early trend in my point of view, and a lot more to do in that area. Which brings me on to my fourth point about unlocking the magic. And I think marketing very much is magic and logic, art and science, creativity and effectiveness. And the real excitement of that balance of being craft men and craft women, making marketing mixes that engage people, and as I say, engage people more than the competitors. Now, in recent years, of course, all of us have had to get much more tech savvy. We've had to learn about data. We've had to build technology capabilities, and we've had to do a lot more in the area of understanding how technology has changed marketing. And in doing so, I do believe we've taken our focus off the magic part more than we probably intended. So the creative, the content creation side of marketing, I think has suffered because we've spent a lot of time building the tech side. And that's important because, you know, the companies that didn't do that no longer exist. And there's been huge benefits to targeting, there's been huge benefits to understanding consumers and insights from our whole journey around data. The difficult part is of course, is the biggest impact you'll have on your business is through the creativity, the content, not the targeting. The targeting, of course, will make it better, and we need to do that, and we need to make sure we show up where our consumers are showing up. But in doing so, we need to show up with great creative. And certainly the evidence I have as the president of the Advertising Association, the quality of content, the quality of the creative has gone down over recent years. And collectively, as an industry, we need to get that back up, because to break through the clutter and get noticed, you need to have engaging content and engaging creative. So that balance between magic and logic, I feel, is a little bit out of balance. Very much needed to get the logic bit going further. But now I think the importance of getting the creative side going is more than before, is an important part of marketing. Which brings me to my fifth and sort of last reflection about marketing. And it builds well off that last comment, because at the end of the day, we're no longer talking, as you know, about digital marketing. We are marketing in a digital world. And in doing so, I think the importance of building skills and capabilities, no matter what stage you are in the business, is critical. And capabilities and training, to me, is so important. Now, you are earlier in your careers than some of the others on the call from the marketers' senior ranks, and certainly I'm sure you see it. I saw it as well. I saw what I called a lost generation, and the lost generation for me were people who were in their sort of 40s who didn't have sort of kids who were old enough to be part of the digital revolution. So, you know, my eldest son works for Google, my daughter's in advertising, my middle son's in events, and at the end of the day, you know, they're all digitally savvy. And by definition, you know, if I wanted to keep in contact with my children when they were at university, they're all working now, you know, if I wasn't connected, then I wouldn't be connecting with them. And then, of course, there's the younger generation who have grown up with all things digital. The lost generation thought is there's a chunk of people who don't have children old enough to drag them in and aren't, you know, true digital natives, who again are just bluffing too much. Now, a lot of them are sensible and have learned an awful lot, but there's some of them who just haven't learned enough, and I think they're slowing business down. Unfortunately, I used to find at Unilever, these are the very people that were leading our businesses and our brands that you had to encourage. So one of the things I did, for instance, is I did compulsory training on all things digital, from, you know, search and e-commerce, you know, through to data and social, and I took it right up to the top of the business. The only person I didn't have mandatory training for was our CEO, Paul Pullman, but I did have someone who sat down and mentored him. But even my colleagues on the executive, we did mandatory training with a test. So you do something on, I don't know, SEO, and then the end of that, there'd be a test. It'd all be digital, and I could then know whether you passed your test or not. And if you hadn't, you had to redo the section. And I say that because it's very un-Unilever to have things like mandatory training. But I think what's so important about the mandatory training, it was a way of stepping people up. And I think you've got to encourage everyone around you to live the space. And it's not good enough just to be on the platforms that you enjoy. You've got to be on all the platforms to understand what your consumers enjoy. So just as in the olden days, people used to say you have to watch the right TV programs that everyone watches, and the movies and the newspapers. Of course, now what you have to do is be active on all different platforms. That's one of the reasons why, myself, I've invested over the years between LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. And I have to confess, I'm pretty slow on building up on Instagram, but I'm doing that now. But between those platforms, I have 330,000 followers. And I've built up over the time purely by the fact of being interested in, engaging in, and learning. And my principle, I couldn't have been the CMO of Unilever if I couldn't lead from the front. So as you're building your muscles, you've got to carry on leading from the front. So when the market continues to shift, as it will, make sure you adopt and have interest in new technologies. I used to do a lot with startups, and I do now. I'm an angel investor in startups, because to carry on learning and building those muscles is all part of being a great marketer. So those are my 5 thoughts around marketing, stretching from trends and putting people first, and brands as a force for good, and building brand love, and unlocking the magic, and finally about building capabilities. So I'd just like to end before we move to the Q&A with 5 lessons learned, which hopefully will also give you some thoughts for the future. So one of my first lessons learned is 80% of success is showing up. I think just too often people just aren't in the right place at the right time. And you can find yourself questioning whether you should be there, or you can question whether you've really got the time, or you can question whether actually, will I make a difference if, or whatever. All those things that hold you back. You've got to be in it to win it, and showing up and being present and taking part is a huge part of building your career, or indeed, building marketing, showing up in front of consumers, showing up in store. And I think too many people miss out on opportunities because they just don't show up. So my first sort of lesson learned over the years is 80% of success is just showing up. Now, of course, you've shown up on this particular Zoom, so you're already 80% in, so you've only got 20% more to get success from this evening. My second thought is about if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. I think too often we beat ourselves up about failure. And don't get me wrong, if you keep failing, you'll lose your job. But if you fail and genuinely learn, because we learn more from our failures, so you don't do it again, I believe that is a sign of you stretching the envelope, really trying to make things happen. And people who play it safe in this fast-changing world get nowhere. They'll end up having a mediocre career and a mediocre life. If you want to be part of the best, you're going to have to push yourself, and in doing so, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, as long as you learn from them and you don't try and bury them. Because if you bury them, you'll sort of repeat them and doing them again, and we learn more from our mistakes. My third sort of lesson I've learned is if your persistence is more than their resistance, you'll win through. I find so often people around you create barriers that aren't necessarily true, and it's very easy to be disenchanted and pushed back. Really believe in what you're doing and really be really persistent. And if you keep pushing and keep trying, keep shaping, you will find a way through. And ultimately, the other person will just give up because they realize, oh my God, he or she really believes in this. Well, let them go with it. Let them go with it. But that persistence is an important part of it. Which brings me on to my my fourth of my 5, which is one I learned from Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls before he was Bear Grylls. So before he became all this flash guy on the TV, he was the youngest Brit that climbed Everest, and I used him at a conference when I was running laundry. He was a very, very nervous speaker, so nothing like the sort of smooth television guy. And Bear Grylls said to me, which I thought was quite interesting when he was in this conference, because everyone kept saying, it's extraordinary about what you do, extraordinary how you got to the Everest and got to the top, and you were so young. And he said, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is one little word: extra. And all I do is that little extra. And what struck me then, and it's so true, and it's something I've seen all my life, is you'd be surprised how many people just do enough, just do sufficient, just get to that point. And if you can be the person that does that little bit extra, it doesn't have to be a lot extra, that little bit extra, it's amazing the difference you can create. Because if you're that person who's that little bit extra over a period of time, all those little extras add up. And not only do you get noticed, but you also break through and make an impact. And that expression just stuck with me from Bear Grylls. It really resonated at the time. And I've seen it through my career of those people who do that little bit extra. They go from being ordinary to extraordinary. And so many people just stay at the ordinary level. Which brings me to 2 minutes to be able to come up with my fifth and final thought. And this is actually that I really believe that miserable people deliver miserable results. At the end of the day, you're in marketing. You should have some fun being in marketing. You could have chosen to be an actuary or an investment banker, or dare I say an engineer like I started my life. And those are very different careers. You've chosen to be in marketing, and marketing is a fabulous career, a career where you can actually, you have the license to go out there and meet people and understand people and find out ways to serve them better and find out why they do this, and rather than doing that, the ways you can actually invest in understanding technology or content, and if your partner is complaining about you spending too much time on your mobile phone, you can say, oh no, this is part of me living the space. If I don't do this, I'll lose my job. I need to be really up on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. It's a fantastic career to have, and I think if you enjoy yourself, you will bring so much more energy and life to your job. You've seen it yourself. There are some people who come into a room and suck the very oxygen out of the room, and all possibilities and opportunities collapse, and go straight out the window. Everyone's covering their backside and wondering what's going to happen next. And then there are other people who come in and they bring with them possibility, interest, opportunity. And those are the people who actually add energy. Those are the people who are actually enjoying their jobs. And if you can do that, you'll find your life will be so much more fun and your work will be so much more fun. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't have to be Tigger every day. But all I'm asking you to be is be more Tigger than Eeyore. There are too many Eeyores in the world, and the marketers shouldn't be the Eeyores. The marketers should be the people who are bringing oxygen, bringing opportunity, bringing insight. And if you are that person, you will bring with you actions, results, and impact on your business more than anyone else. So miserable people deliver miserable results. You're in marketing, have some fun doing it, and in doing so, you'll help the organization as well. Thank you so much to all of you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for all the questions. I really appreciate you spending some time with me, and I hope I've managed to make you think a little bit differently about what you're doing, and hopefully inspired you to first of all take what you're doing and do it bigger and better and faster, but more importantly, just to enjoy it. You're a marketer. It's a fantastic career. I've had tons of fun, and I still am, and I would hope you all can as well. So on that note, I'll say cheerio to all of you.
Keith, thank you so much for all that. And I think everybody, please give Keith a fantastic round of applause with the icons and the hands. It was a wonderful inspiration, and we've made you late, for which we apologize, but thank you so much for taking the time.
Not at all. I was enjoying myself.